And we are live. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining today's data analytics live stream with Smartbridge. I'm Alex Mundy, the enablement representative for the DNA team, and I'm joined by our director, Brad Northington. How are you doing today, Brad?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Can't complain. Before we dive into today's live stream, I kind of want to let Brad give a little bit of background about himself and his tenure here at Smartbridge.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. So yeah, I am helping lead the data analytics practice here at Smartbridge. I joined at the beginning of this year after spending about 20 to 25 years in various corporate FP&A, financial, analytics, and BI positions. So a long history in restaurant and retail and grocery, as well as hospitality. So all industries with high transaction volume, lots of analytics to really churn through that deep insights.
Perfect. So you're the right type of person we want to talk to today about all of this. So lastly, before we start, we want to let everybody know, especially in the audience, that we're going to have some trivia questions throughout the stream. So feel free to participate in those. And we'll also be answering any questions from the audience that at the end of the stream. So make sure to stick around for that. So talking about trivia, let's go ahead and go to our first trivia question for today. So like I said, audience, feel free to chime in with their answers, but I'm gonna go ahead and ask Brad. So how much data is there to be expected in the entire world by the year 2025? Is it A, 346 exabytes, B, 175 zettabytes, C, 2.21 yottabytes, or D, trick question, no one knows?
Man, I was not prepared for this, Alex, but since I'm a Star Wars guy, I'm going to have to go with Yoda bytes for sure.
Yoda bytes? That's a good guess. We'll give the audience some time to kind of figure out which one it's going to be. My favorite answer out of this is trick question, no one knows. You know, I think that kind of suits the case, but let's go ahead and unveil the answer. So it's actually B, 175 zettabytes. So definitely lots of data out there. And especially with the way that the world is starting to modernize, you're going to be expecting to see a higher influx of data coming in. So with that being said, we're going to go to our first question today, Brad. So before we even dive deep into any of this, you know, I want to bring forth the more important question, right? What does it even mean to modernize data analytics?
Absolutely. Let's start high level. Good point. Very hot topic, modernizing data analytics. So it's a broad topic. So before you even really get to the technology, we need to address making sure that we align with the business. The data analytics needs to be aligned to drive the business and align with the business strategy. So it means to enable the business, to provide agility to the business, and provide competitive advantage to the business. Now, how about it from a technology standpoint, right? So that's kind of vague. So data analytics is broad still. So there's data, there's integrations, there's moving and processing the data, there's housing the data, there's reporting on the data. So one of the key facets is to really understand what makes the architecture or the data platform modern. Right. Number one is data. There's lots of different types of data, sizes of data, locations of the data. So it can be structured, unstructured, semi-structured, you name it. So we need to make sure that we can handle all those types. The analytics that are needed to be done by the business needs to be defined. So it's obviously in many cases, it's just trying to go beyond Excel. Our nearest and dearest to us are Excel, our safe space. We need to understand the business has to get past that from just a new BI tool like a Tableau or a Power BI, which we at Smartbridge support, or more advanced machine learning and data science capabilities. Again, last, we also have to address the agility needed by the business. So getting to the cloud means we don't have to wait for months at times to get approval processes and get hardware provisioned and on-site and provisioned. So you can literally spin up new databases or VMs or security issues at the touch of a button. So it really improves the business's ability to perform quickly.
Right. And so from what it sounds like is that there's a little bit of complexities that go along to make sure that you get to this final goal. And so with these many steps and the complexity to it. So for me, someone who may not be as familiar with modernizing data analytics, where does one even start with this whole process?
Good question. I always start with a kind of a tagline, and my tagline here is aim big, but start small. And what I mean by that is, as we kind of just briefly touched on, data analytics is a broad realm.
Right.
And it can be overwhelming, and it can be overwhelming of even just where to start and how to start. So we usually start with, okay, what's something that you can't do today and you want to do quickly to show progress and deliver quick insight. But beyond that, you have to build a good roadmap. You have to start with assessing, again, back to the business, what the business needs, assessing the current state of what they have from a data and infrastructure capabilities. But also it goes beyond that. And you're going to hear a repetitive theme here. We have to address the people, the process, and the technology. So on the people side, where do you start? Well, we need to understand what the skills and the tools are that they're using today and what they don't have and what they can't do. Maybe we need to simply get them some new tools and some new training. The process, in many, many cases, just trying to get the process, the data from A to B is incredibly difficult and time intensive. Sometimes that's due to the size of the data, the complexity of the data, the amount of cleansing or the bad structured form the data comes in. So a lot of times we take a deep look at the data processing just to simplify that. And last, after you get through those two things, people and process, you get to the technology and say, how can the technology now enable the business based upon understanding what the people and process are and they need to be going forward to support the technology.
Gotcha. And I do definitely love that phrase, right? So you aim big, start small, taking everything in baby steps. And, from what you kind of outlined, the process does seem a little bit intimidating and daunting. So my follow-up question to that is, what are some of the challenges companies will face when modernizing data analytics?
Some of the challenges are honestly, some of them are soft and not even technical. It's honestly sometimes just the fear to start, of losing control, that fear of going from maybe a legacy fully on-prem site to, wow, we're going to put this stuff and release some of the control into the cloud, right? And what does that mean? How do we touch it? How do we feel it? So just getting past some of that initial shock and awe of, hey, we need to again, drive business agility and enablement by just getting to the cloud. Some of that can be a challenge, just that initial fear. Some of the other initial challenges are things the kind of the 5 repetitive things we hear are the access. We had trouble just getting to the data. The speed of the data and processing analytics, it just takes too long. Scale. How do we keep up with the ever growing data, yottabytes, zettabytes, whatever that's out there today. And then simplicity is how do we make sure that as we do this major potential overhaul of our data and analytics platform and modernize our platform, how do we ensure that we start with a minimum viable product, MVP, or how do we ensure that we keep it simple? And so stress on simplicity of don't overcook it, don't overbake it out of the gate. But again, aim big, start small.
Right. Yeah. And going back to what I was saying, the process may sound daunting, but, the way that you kind of make it boil down to just the simplicity of it definitely soothes my nerves at least. So with that, let's go ahead and take a small break. We're going to go ahead and jump into our second trivia question up here. And so as mentioned, remember, audience members, feel free to chime in to get some answers in here. But actually, it's actually a good segue talking about, some challenges from modernizing data analytics. I want to ask you, Brad, so bad or poor data quality costs U.S. businesses blank annually. So is it going to be A, 600 billion, B, 212 million, C, 1.7 trillion, or D, $2.50?
I'm going to go ahead and make a logical guess that D is not the right answer. Usually C is a safe bet, but 600 billion is just nice, round, and sweet. So we're going to go with 600 billion.
600 billion.
Hey.
Okay, let's go ahead and let the audience give a little bit more time for them to make their selections. I thought I was going to trick you real hard with that 250 there at the bottom, but I guess you're a little bit smarter than that. So we'll leave it to that. So let's go ahead and see what the answer is. And you're correct, Brad. It is $600 billion. So definitely, food for thought. That's a whole lot of money that companies can be losing out on with bad data quality. So going back to what you said, making sure that there's simplicities to this process to make sure that all the data has become modernized, so you don't lose out on that big chunk of money.
Yeah.
Now, going back to the questions that we have, my next question I want to ask for you is, with these changes being somewhat large, how do companies ensure success through this whole process?
Good follow-up question. Again, one of the key staples is we hadn't really touched on very much yet is the need for governance.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody's heard the old adage of garbage in, garbage out. So we can put the same bad data or garbage into a new cloud platform very easily, and it's going to have the same pain points. So a governance is a key component out of the gate to start addressing it. And that starts again with what we've already talked about, the people, the process, and the technology. That often includes starting with a steering committee or a center of excellence or center of enablement, to have an executive level group making data a strategic priority and a strategic asset for the business. So once that group is there, oftentimes we'll boil it down a little bit lower and have a data steward, a new kind of buzzword term, assigned for each department. Somebody in the department who is a data geek at heart, who wants to kind of challenge the status quo and who wants to be an enabler and give me the first one through the wall. I want to test it, have that energy. So it needs to be more than just an IT push. It needs to be a business project. So the other, once we talked about the data governance and kind of get that going, the other key pillars to success are, again, what we talked about before, aligning with the business capabilities. What is the business trying to accomplish? The project cannot drift into la la land and say, hey, we just built all this new stuff and data lakes and massive new integrations and MPP models, and the business is going to go, that's more than we need, or that's not even remotely what we talked about or we think we need. So again, it's aligning with the business, and that very closely that follows with, okay, what's the business strategic needs and pillars? Okay, what are the right data analytics, modern initiatives that tie to each one of those pillars?
Right.
If the business says, hey, our primary focus is customer right now, and it's not product, okay, then we definitely should focus on getting customer data and advanced customer segmentation and promotional targeting going way before we do on maybe a deeper dive on the actual product analytics. So it's tying with the business, staying tied to the business, and making sure that the data analytics modernization projects, or even sub projects, if you will, align with the business's priorities. We already kind of touched on this. The third one is the people in the organization. Understanding, does the current team, leadership, data stewards have the capacity and the skills to go with the new tools that we may introduce, a new cloud data warehouse? How do they query that? How do they access that? How do we ensure that it's secure? So there is a certain level of, again, people, process, and technology aspect to this that has to be vetted out to ensure success. I mean, those three pillars are very, very key. And last but not least, again, back to the technology. I think I'm on number 4 now. The architecture and the actual tools, right? What do we want to do if we're trying to get them off-prem or into a multi-cloud? What are the right tools and architecture needed? Do they need a data lake because they have a really advanced team of data scientists that need just raw data? Don't give me all the downstream stuff. They want to get their hands in everything and do their own massaging. Do they need that raw zone, or do they don't? Their data size is much smaller. They don't even have a terabyte of data. They probably don't need a full-blown Azure Synapse data warehouse. Probably a SQL DB in the cloud would work just fine, and they're going to save some money on that. So that's when you get to the architecture and the tools, kind of after you've made sure business alignment, the data analytics modernization projects and tasks align to those strategic pillars, and you assess the people in the organization, the process. Then you really get to the technology and the tools.
Right. And I think it's really good to emphasize on that, right? So the people, the process, technology, it needs to be a unified change within the company. So that's definitely glad to hear. Another question I have, so based on your background, your expertise, right, being so well in depth in data analytics in the game so far, what are some of the best practices to modernizing data analytics?
Absolutely. Well, you can definitely start with we have a architecture reference that all the pieces that go with the cloud. There it is on the screen. Thanks for sharing, team. But before we even get into this, it's a great visual. I'll talk to that in just 1 second. So again, we want to make sure the best practices are a little bit of repetition here, but making sure we stay aligned with the business. And then really what I mean by that is making sure the business stays engaged. The business needs to see progress, understand where it's going, because these things don't happen overnight. These are very easily 6 to 12 to 18-month transformations, and it's a big word. It's a transformation, and the business needs to stay engaged along the way.
Right.
Once you have that, the other one, again, best practices, you got to get the governance going out of the gate. You got to make sure that what we're going to push to the cloud, what we're going to spend and invest strategically in the cloud, that we're putting our best foot forward. And what I mean by that is good data. Mm-hmm. We have garbage data, like I said before, garbage in, garbage out. Whether we move it to the cloud, it's going to have the same processes. So that governance to oversee the right skills, the right process, the right cleansing of the data manipulation of the data before it even gets there, so that once we do release the first new sexy dashboard in Tableau or Power BI or whatever your tool is, that it's consumable and that it's not a pain point.
Right.
So once you get past those couple of things and tackle, again, the business alignment and engagement and the governance, we have what we see on here on the screen. I want to kind of talk to this a little bit. So this is kind of a reference architecture guide. It can be a little overwhelming. There's a good 25 or so icons on here, and you don't have to have every one of these, but it's important to talk about these one as part of the ecosystem that you're actually going to put in the cloud. So briefly, data sources. Again, we talked about this a little bit. Okay, it's defining them and prioritizing the data sources. You've got structured, you've got on-prem, you got different locations, you've got IoT data sets coming from from different applications. We need to understand what's the priority, what's the ones that are the most valuable, econometric value to the business, and that's where we should start. Right. The ingestion, based upon those prioritized data sets, there's lots of ingestions. There's lots of ETL tools out there. Again, Azure has a complete stack. Other great tools are Snowflake and Informatica. But regardless of the tool, again, can the right tool align with the right priority, size, type of data sources that we need to get to the business quickly? So is that real time? Is that batch loading? Is that, you name it, streaming data? So different data types, different business needs require different type of tools and ingestion. Then you have that middle section, kind of the blue section, where you talk about your repositories. Again, we touched a little bit on, okay, it's very standard now to have a data lake. Just get the data to the cloud, get it there in a raw zone, and then from there you can transform, stage it, load it actually into tools like a data warehouse, and some other more advanced data science models. So the understanding, again, what the business needs depends on what type of repository or holding of the data, housing of the data we need. The processing goes very well along with kind of the ingestion model. How do we move that data from within the cloud, from A to B? How do we transform that effectively? Too many transformations of data on the fly can actually be quite costly. So just getting it there, doing some transformations, maybe with some Azure Databricks to keep costs down rather than trying to do it all in Azure Data Factory to keep costs low is another good tip and trick. Again, the bottom section of the blue there, again, is the data governance. We've kind of touched on that. But again, security is a big component. Once one of those fear of going to the cloud, how do I ensure, am I actually putting my company more at risk? How do we ensure the right access, that every piece of data that goes in is encrypted and at the right level? To do that, you need to actually have a part of that COE or that governance model. You need to have a very big focus on security. What are we willing to put in the cloud? There's certain pieces of information, personal information, financial information that maybe we don't want to take that risk. So those need to be aligned on up front as well. Right. So again, the presentation kind of layer on the right over here is again kind of the last piece of this of how do we serve the business now to serve the data to the business. Mm-hmm. There's multiple tools out there, but serve it to them in the right way. To some degree, you crawl before you walk, before you run. So getting them good content, serving it to them, getting interactions started. And then as their skills grow, back to that people, process, technology, you can start unleashing some of the guardrails and having them actually do some more of their modeling on top of that thin kind of orange line there on the right of a semantic layer where they know that everything coming to them now is certified data. Mm-hmm. It's vetted. The governance team is watching it and guaranteeing its accuracy to some degree, to some percentage. And so the business now has the comfort of knowing that, okay, we're all pulling the same data, whether it be sales data or product data or customer data. We're all starting with the same certified, accurate data sources. So there was a lot there to cover on the slide. Again, it's not to say you need every single piece of this to start. Again, it can be overwhelming. aim big, start small, but every one of these needs to be talked about in general to understand what we need to put in place or why we may not need one of these.
Right. And I think this is a great visualization showing all of the process that goes into the modernizing of data analytics. And you did a great job, showing the step-by-step process. And like you said, the big emphasis on, starting small and then working your way up into that. So absolutely. I appreciate that. My last question I have, and before I get into it, just kind of reminding the audience again, feel free to go ahead and comment any questions that you may have, and we'll take those and answer those here at the end. But my question I have for you, Brad, is, we both know what Smartbridge is capable of, right? But speaking to someone fresh, maybe someone in the audience who doesn't really know much about Smartbridge, why would someone want to choose Smartbridge to modernize their data and analytics?
Well, the short answer is we're the best, hands down, without question. But no, but seriously, a little bit about Smartbridge. We're not just about data analytics. We have a team ready to do that for sure. But Smartbridge is about digital transformation and digital innovation. So we have several practices, 3 practices to be specific, that can handle that. So we go more than just getting the data to the cloud, analyzing your data, processing your data from the data analytics practice. The other 2 are our enterprise group, and we have a digital actual innovation group. So some other areas that we can help with that go along with a data analytics modernization to the cloud are automation or robotic process automation, hashtag RPA, hot button in a big way. Companies can save money in tight times with COVID and our pandemic going on. There's been some tough industries hit. And so cost cutting is a big focus. RPA can help with that in a big way, for sure, of taking legacy manual, email, paper, spreadsheet processes that touch 10 people and take 3 days. They can write a quick bot or automatic process, if you will, and get that down to just a matter of seconds or even minutes. And then we also have some Salesforce and ERP and JD Edwards and NetSuite capabilities. So some other very important large ERP platforms, which oftentimes are one of the key sources that feed an enterprise data platform or warehouse, and the business needs insights out of those. So that team can also get engaged on a large data modernization project as expertise. So again, we bring a very complete team to the table. We also partner very strategically with some of the big players and the best in class technologies out there, like Microsoft, Azure, Snowflake, Cloud Data Warehouse, Power BI, Tableau, MicroStrategy, and Informatica. That's just to name a few on our data analytics group. But Smartbridge also focuses heavily on the business outcome and the business. Again, you're going to hear this, you've heard this repeatedly, that the business needs to be the focus, not just the technology. Technology comes last. So making sure that our projects are tightly managed and aligned with the business engaged the entire step of the way. Every project's going to have one of our directors or oftentimes our CEO very engaged to ensure client success. And then we have a very differentiated and broad expertise of restaurant. Obviously, being headquartered in Houston, oil and gas is right in our backyard. So we have a lot of history there. Retail and construction are a couple other industries that we have a lot of broad knowledge and expertise in. So again, 3 very good and aligned strategic practices to solve a overall digital problem, not just the data analytics. That's one of the pieces. But Smartbridge is a very well positioned company to be one of your good partners.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, with all the different services, Smartbridge, is a company that wears many hats, right? And we do very well at it based on our experience. So once again, that was a great answer right there, Brad. So I do greatly appreciate that. Before we finish things off, I want to go to our last trivia question, because you did mention our partners talking about Microsoft. So I want to bring up this final trivia question here.
All right.
So before the release of Microsoft Azure, what was the internal project code name? Was it A, Project Cloud9, B, Project Datasphere, C, Project Blue Dog, or D, Project Red Dog? And we'll go ahead and give the audience a little time to come up with their answers as well. But Brad, what do you think the answer is going to be?
Man, Alex, you're killing me here live on the air of not being prepared. I don't know where you dug these questions up, man, but holy mackerel. I have to go with Blue Dog just because I've got a dog named Blue. I'm not making that up. He's laying right over here.
Blue Dog. Okay, good guess. Good guess. Let's go ahead and see what the actual answer is. It worked. I tricked you. I got you. So it's Project Red Dog. I went ahead and threw in there an extra color of the same thing. Let's see if it tricked Brad, and I definitely got them. So, but I definitely came up with the other one. So Cloud9 and DataSphere, I think those are really cool names for projects that, obviously revolve around the cloud and data and everything like that. So, but yeah, did a great job on the trivia today, Brad. Lastly, we're going to take some questions from the audience.
Awesome.
So let's go ahead and see what we have here. One question we do have for you, Brad, is what's the best way to encourage modernization if I'm a business user?
Very good question. Something that comes up a lot is how does the business actually sometimes need to push, oftentimes IT, to modernize? I would say the short answer is to be able to have a business case around why you think you need to do that. Mm-hmm. How can you show your boss, your department, your leadership, or even IT, how much time you're spending or even wasting trying to get data, reports, analytics out to the business?
Right.
You have a 40-hour work week. You have basically 2,000 hours a year as your capacity. How much of that is going to, non-efficient data wrangling, data cleansing, repetitive tasks, repetitive reporting? If you're a business analyst, if you're a financial analyst, a data analyst, you should be spending the vast majority of your time, let's say 80%, on analyzing the data, analyzing the business data, and trying to show the business what are the key drivers.
Right.
You should be spending 20% of your time on actually repetitive. There is always some wrangling, data cleansing, some prepping. You got to get a report out. But these modern tools will help you become more of an actual analyst and not just a reporter, if that makes sense. So I would say, back to the original question, think about building a business case. Something I've actually done in the past is had a team of mine actually track their time for a matter of months. Didn't make me the most favorite guy in the world, that's for sure. But it clearly proved the point that the team overall was spending in excess of 60% of their time on those repetitive type of wrangling and repetitive process reporting steps, and not actually analyzing the business.
Right. And like you said, right, it's like you want to make sure that you're focused on that analyzing part. Let everything else take care of the rest. So
absolutely.
We do have one more question here from Victoria Lish. So she says, what's the difference between modernizing your BI versus data management?
Very good question. So sometimes BI, business intelligence, and data management, or even BI versus data, can get confusing, or where's that fine gray line between the two? And the answer is, honestly, they're very closely aligned. Modernizing your business intelligence is oftentimes viewed as just the reporting side of that, but intelligence and data on the flip side can be just on the housing, on the databases, on the data warehouse. So how do you modernize the ability to house, replicate, transform, integrate your data is often viewed as just data management. And again, the business intelligence, oftentimes there's a gray line there. It can be usually business intelligence dashboards reporting, but then there also is a very big, the tools, Power BI, Tableau, have a lot of capabilities nowadays of doing a lot of your own data integration, data modeling directly within the tools and sharing data sets directly from there. So those two, to answer your question, they're blending more and more and more today. But to answer your question, high level, BI is more on the reporting side, dashboarding side, and data management is more on the data housing and structural architecture side.
Right. Yeah. And like you said, I think when things start to get more modernized, things start to kind of blend and mix together. So definitely great answer. So, well, Brad, I think that's all the questions that we have. What I will say to the audience members, if you do have any questions after the stream, whenever it ends, don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Brad on LinkedIn and ask some questions. So with that being said, I want to thank everyone for joining the stream today. It was definitely a blast, lots of fun, and definitely lots of knowledge. Make sure to follow us on our social media accounts, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube. You can find us at Smartbridge. And also, I want to thank Brad. So thank you for taking time and allowing for me and the audience to ask you these questions.
Absolutely, Alex. Thanks for the great MC hosting. And I do have to say, I'm questioning the first question. I don't think Zettabytes is right. We need to start a movement. Hashtag Yodabytes.
Hashtag Yodabytes. Well, we can definitely debate about that for sure. So, well, with that being said, I hope everyone has a great rest of their day and take care. Thanks for joining.
Guys. Bye.
Bye.